Okay, welcome back. This is the Master Shamanism class. I think we've gone through 2 complete months, unless I'm missing something. So this is the first week of March. And so I've laid a lot of groundwork. And, I want you to not feel overwhelmed by all of that stuff. But I do want you to go back and listen to that and work through that. I've said that this path that I'm teaching is not really, just a book learning path. Although we do have, obviously, I've written tons of books, and probably there's many more to come. So we need that to get the intellect engaged, because we are, after all, Westerners, and we do function through our intellect. Our intellect needs to approve of everything before we actually get into it and accept anything and follow anything. But this is really about a path of action. So in the beginning, I gave you a lot of things to do. But bear in mind, like I said in the last master class, really, find a couple of things that work for you. Have at least one meditative practice per day. I recommend the whole breath, but as long as you're doing something consistently every day. If you've worked with me with the Vedic astrology, and I've given you a specific ritual for you to do, that's something that you can do as well. But be doing something every day that connects you on an energetic level. Again, the whole breath for me is a staple. But there are others, many of other things that you can do. But now I want to start talking about the runes. So before I get any further, let me make sure that you know what the resources are that I'd like for you to have available to you. I seem to be missing one. No, they're there. Okay, so there are 3 books that I've written on runes, and it will be helpful for you if you have an understanding of those. So let me give you what those are. The first one is Rune Shamanism. This will help give you a foundation when it comes to runes. The next one is Rune Divination, which is what most people do with the runes, is that they use the runes for predicting the future, that kind of thing. And I'm going to be talking a lot about that, but this book will also be very helpful. And then I have the Advanced Rune Shamanism book, which is something I don't think I've ever seen anywhere else. I think I'm the only person that's doing this. But anyway, we'll be getting into that later on, but this is also an excellent book to have. It's great for solving problems, using the rune to solve problems or to change your future. Change your karma, change your dharma, your orlog. So I recommend those 3 books, especially the first 2. You're going to need the information in that. So I'm not, if I were to go over everything in the books, I'd be taking up your time. And maybe if that's something you want me to do, I can do that. But I know there are people at varying levels. Some people have read all the books. Some people are just getting into this for the first time. But what I'd like to do here is, in this class, as we start to go into the runes, I'm going to share with you my personal experiences. I could talk about the definitions of what this rune means and where it came from and all that kind of stuff. But and while that has a lot of value, this is an advanced class, and I want to talk to you about personal experiences and things that I've learned working with the runes. So today we are going to start with the first rune, which is FEHU. And as you know, FEHU is the first of the Elder Futhark. I only work with the Elder Futhark. And the reason for that is because The other Futharks represent a shift in pronunciation. And, the pronunciation shifted very rapidly. Now, here's something that's interesting to know since we are talking about the Futhark. The Proto-Germanic language was actually very stable across all of the Germanic areas. Not like now, where you have English and Danish and German and Swedish and Norwegian and Icelandic and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we have so many different dialects, and they're no longer mutually intelligible. There was a time when before the Roman conquest of Europe, where you could pretty much go through any part of the Germanic speaking areas of Northern Europe, and you would be able to converse. And we know this because of some ancient, some of the oldest runic inscriptions, is operating from that. If there were such a thing, our ancestors were barbarians, so we don't think of it like that. But the Proto-Germanic would be what we would call classical Germanic, and it operated from the same kinds of rules that Greek and Latin did. I studied Greek and Latin in college. My first 4 years of college I spent studying that, and so that gave me a really good foundation of how classical languages work. Old English is a classical language. It does the same thing. Anybody who's not familiar with what makes modern language, English especially, from classical languages, is that in classical language you have one word, and that word has, and there you put an ending on the word, which will tell you whether it is the subject, whether it's an object, whether it's, how is it acting as an object, and we still have tiny vestiges of that in modern English. And we're starting to lose it because people are getting it completely wrong. For instance, whom, when do you use whom instead of who? Who is there? To whom are you speaking? That M comes from that old use of the classical Anglo-Saxon, which operated on, and it wouldn't be just like one or two, there would be 6 different endings or more to tell you where it was. And what that gave you is that the word told you, the ending of the word, if we're talking about a noun, would tell you what its function was. And so unlike now, you have to speak in an order. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. So we learn the function of a word based on its order in the sentence. It's because we've lost all of those endings, those case endings. So you could really, it was like a salad, and you could take the words and mix them up. And it wouldn't matter what the order was, because you had this deep intuitive understanding. When you heard the end of the word, you knew what it meant. And it gave language a much more poetic way to communicate. So when we think about our ancestors, especially our supposed barbarian ancestors who couldn't read or write, they were illiterate. When we think of it like that, we think, oh, they must not be very smart. But the amount of intelligence and brain power that it took for them to speak the way that they did, if we were to hear them speak and understand it, we would see that they were able to communicate extremely effectively, far more effectively than we do now. So intelligence is not an issue here. And it's actually, the further you go back in time, the more complicated and the more specific language gets. And it doesn't matter which language we're talking about. If we're talking about Latin, which was a classical language, even the classical Latin poets and philosophers talked about, their version of Latin that came, hundreds of years before, and how they couldn't understand it. There were few inscriptions that they could read, and they could barely understand it because it was so dense and it was so specific. I mean, language and communication was a science. That's how Sanskrit is viewed today by the East Indians. People are Sanskrit scholars, and they still, the way that ancient Sanskrit, the way they spoke, we just don't have the same communication understandings, and that has to do with not so much with the brain power, which is part of it, but it has to do with being able to feel and connect on a feeling level. We don't have that anymore in our language. Has a lot to do with that. So what does this have to do with runes? Well, runes are the basis of communication. And again, I've gone off on a tangent, but to go back to what I was saying, the reason why I use the Elder Futhark is because that is the way classical Germanic language was spoken. That was the alphabet. That meant that every word had only those sounds in it. So as modern times approached, which is the result of massive interconnection of multiple cultures coming in all over each other, then what ends up happening is that language starts to shift really rapidly. Now, up until that time, especially in Northern Europe, the Germanic tribes were very isolated from the rest of the world, so their language had pretty much stayed the same. And so that's why you had people who spoke languages that were very mutually intelligible, because language hadn't changed for perhaps thousands of years. And this is one of the things that has been very interesting when you look at the study of the migration of people. So as you know, maybe you don't, I am a follower of the, what is that called? The Paleolithic continuity paradigm. And that flies in the face. So again, we're talking about language, we're talking about the origins of people. Even to this day, you can find books. I don't know what they're teaching in universities, but I see this all the time. People will talk as though the Aryan migration theory is a fact. And it's not. The Aryan migration theory, which is the basis of all of a lot of the racist thinking that goes on in our thought process, says that at some point, something like 4,000 years ago or 7,000 years ago, these people known as the Indo-Europeans or the Aryans emerged suddenly out of nowhere and swooped down with their horses and their chariots all over Europe, from Russia all the way to India and everywhere in between. And this was the theory, and that we don't know who they were, but there were these people who were hunter-gatherers, and they were overwhelmed by this martial, warlike people who came in and completely supplanted them. I mean, this is still taught. People still talk like this. And it's very frustrating because, again, when it comes to a lot of academia, people really don't think. It's interesting. I do run into this. There's a lot of people who, that I've run into who don't agree with a lot of things that I say, and they'll say, well, in this book it says this, and so says that, and I'll go, where did that person get that information? And they won't have an answer. All they know is that it's written in a book by some guy. Because that guy is a scholar, therefore it must be true. But, listen, scholars are human beings. And, people came up with these theories trying to explain what they didn't understand. The Aryan migration theory is one of them. But the Paleolithic continuity paradigm it's a paradigm, it's not a theory. A theory is, a person comes up with an idea and says, here's my theory, here's what I think happened. And then they go about trying to find evidence to prove it. A paradigm is when you have the same theory that is coming up in multiple disciplines. So in other words, you don't have just a linguist or an archaeologist or a historian. You have, in the Paleolithic continuity paradigm, you have genetics, you have history, and you have linguistics. And all of these, the way it came about is that people in each one of these disciplines, as time was going on, they were coming to this one conclusion, which is that the Indo-European language is extremely old. And this was flying in the face of the Aryan migration theory, which said that somehow out of nowhere, somewhere around 4,000 years ago, these Aryans popped up out of nowhere with their specific language and culture and spread it all over Europe. And, it's a theory because people were trying to understand it. A lot of it was coming from in trying to interpret the Vedas. In the Vedas, it's very clear that the Vedic tribes were coming into what is now Pakistan, and they were displacing the people there. And so they just made an assumption that, since English or French or Latin is similar to Sanskrit, what they spoke, they must have done the same thing up here. And it fed into all kinds of mindset that was going on when this theory was developed, which was in the 1700s. And it fed into this imperial mindset because Europe was in a stage of, imperial conquest. And so they were projecting. This is what psychologists would call projecting. When somebody accuses somebody else of what they're actually doing, it's called projection. And it's usually they're unconscious, meaning they're not aware of it. Perfect example is, I deal with this in my practice all the time. Let's say somebody is super jealous. I'm sure that my wife is cheating on me. And I'll say, well, what evidence do you have of that? I don't. I just know. And then you find out later that this is somebody who is cheating or has cheated in the past. And so they're guilty about that, and they project onto other people their own internal experience, and they're usually completely unaware that they do it. I could name some names. There are some politicians that are doing this right now, but I will keep out of politics for the time being. So that is what the Aryan migration theory is. Nothing more than the unconscious projection of the imperialist attitude that was going on during the 1700s. And it has been accepted as fact because somebody threw it out there. Here's what happened. Somebody who had a degree in some university. And so that's the truth. And this, of course, is the same with medicine and, in any other kind of science. This is kind of what happens. But the Paleolithic continuity paradigm, people in these different disciplines, linguistics and history and archaeology, were saying this theory doesn't line up with the actual scientific evidence that we're finding. The evidence that they're finding is that the Indo-European people came to Europe with their language and their culture. And of course, after being in Europe for 40,000 years and being isolated from each other because of 40,000 years of ice ages, the languages shifted a little bit and the mythology shifted a little bit, but when you look at it, it's basically the same. And so that's why this is important, because the runes reflect the language of the Germanic people, I think, going back into the ice ages. And as I've said in my books, I believe that the verbal chant of the Futhark alphabet and the order with which they are taught reflects thousands of years of Germanic spiritual culture. And I won't get into it too deeply, but the main reason I say that is because if what academia tells us, which again, there is no verifiable proof for, it's just a theory that's been thrown out and people accept it as fact. If what academia says is that somewhere 2,000 years ago, the Germanic tribes, because maybe they traveled or whatever, picked up Mediterranean alphabets and brought it back and called it the Futhark. The problem with that is this, that even though the symbols, the written carved symbols, may very well represent various alphabets, before it was standardized. The one thing that is completely, totally different is the order of the Futhark. There is no other alphabet on the planet that goes in that order. In fact, the alphabet we have today, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, is the same for Latin. It's the same for Greek. It's the same for Hebrew. That if the Germanic tribes were merely just copying what they saw in the Mediterranean, then they would do the same thing. It would be Ansuz, Berchtanaz, Kenaj. It would be in that order, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's not. And because the Germanic people are, have been and always have been very practical, if it works, don't fix it. If that were the case, then they would have, they're not going to elaborate on something that doesn't work. Not to mention the fact that 2,000 years ago, when supposedly the Futhark was invented, there was no unity among the Germanic tribes. I mean, they were spread out all over the place, fighting with each other. For them to have this one alphabet that they all universally used just doesn't make any sense. So again, that theory doesn't stand up to just common sense. What does make sense is that since language changes very slowly, and especially, the farther you go back in time, especially when you've got people who are isolated, language tends not to change at all. Because, language, ancestry becomes really important. And this is why we have songs, why we have mythology that, wasn't originally, mythology wasn't written down in prose, it was sung. And this is how people remembered their mythology. Not only was it sung, but there was intonations, and a good example is to go and watch the Hindus learning the Vedas. They learn it with all of the intonations that have been going on for thousands of years. So that's why I use the Elder Futhark, for that reason. And so that in and of itself gives us the ability to tap into the mindset of our ancestors, which is what shamanism is founded on. It's founded on continuing the energetic connection to the ancestral masters. Without it, we really don't have a connection to the universe, to, we lose a lot. We have to have that. And so runes are that. Runes are a way to stay connected to the very ancient ancestors. Who knows? I mean, it could be tens of thousands of years that this Futhark has been used. So that's why I use the Elder Futhark. So let me see. How long have I talked? Okay, about 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts on FEHU. I'll just generally put it out there. So bear in mind this image, which I'm going to show you, which is, of course, when we get into advanced rune shamanism, we use this this mandala very intensely. But for now, just take a look at where the runes are placed. You're going to see this is different from a lot where people will sort of spread the runes out, and try and get all of them in the circle. And I've set them, I've broken them up into their natural 3/8, and I've put them into each of the 8 external worlds. So just take a look at that, and then we'll talk some more. Okay, so if you need to go back and pause that, you can. And of course, Advanced Rune Shamanism talks about that in depth. So I recommend getting a head start on that because that's a pretty dense science in and of itself. So FEHU. FEHU is associated with the North. And when we start talking about what the North is and what Niflheim is, the realm of the waters, the realm of, in physical terms, it's the closest we can get to Ganungagat. It is the realm of pure potential. So what does this have to do with anything? You know, what's interesting is that Mercury is associated with the north. Mercury is the intellect, which, as we talked about before, the intellect is necessary because without it, we can't do anything. I mean, I can't make the conclusion that, you know, I'm looking at the camera right now, which is over there, and I'm sitting here in the separation of space. Without my intellect, I can't do that. In fact, I'll give you an example. I forget what movie it was. It was about a genius musician who was schizophrenic, I think. And he's standing on the street corner talking to a guy, and there's a plane flying overhead. And he looks up at the plane and he says, "Are you flying that plane?" And the guy says, "No, I'm standing here." In his mind, he wasn't able to make the distinction between him standing there and flying in the plane, which meant that there was, you know, part of what was going on is his intellect isn't functioning properly, because the intellect says, oh, the plane is up there, I'm down here, he's down here with me, so that's there, that's here. You know, the intellect does that. It makes distinctions. And so that's why Mercury is Mercury is the protector, the defender of that realm, because without Mercury, we wouldn't be able, you know, we were going to the northern realm or use energy from Niflheim, we wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Which is why I say if we were to walk into Niflheim, we would just come apart. So this has to do with pure potential. And interestingly enough, also, Mercury has a strong connection to businessmen and money, making money. So a career and money and business. This is one of the places that Mercury, the intellect, is extremely important. We talked about this. I will talk about this a little bit. You know, I've shared that money really doesn't exist. I mean, the concept of money is nothing more than that. It's a concept. And what's interesting and sad is that there are people who are dying because they don't have enough of this concept. You know, the same world, the same energy surrounds everybody. But if you don't have money, which is nothing, you can't survive, which is totally counterintuitive to, you know, the natural state of being, which is, I'm right here, what's around me? There's a tree with some fruit in it, there's a animal over there, there's some fish there, there's some roots and some berries there, and I eat that, you know, or I cut that up and make a house out of that wood, or whatever it is. You know, that's what FEHU is. FEHU is stuff. But nowadays, in order to access FEHU, we need to have Mercury, which makes this distinction about money. And now money isn't even, you know, it used to be coins, right? If we're talking about money, it used to be coins, and then it became paper, which was, paper is nothing more than an IOU. So that dollar bill that you have is really an IOU from the government that they owe you $1 worth of silver or gold or whatever it is. And of course now, you know, in modern times, that isn't even true. I don't even remember whether some law was passed, and that's how we got banks. And now we don't even, I mean, I almost never use cash. The only, you know, whenever I buy stuff, it's with my debit card, or I pay it online. So my money is not how, you know, is when I, you know, when I log into my bank and I see how much, you know, numbers and zeros there are there, that's how much money I have. It doesn't even exist. Nothing changes hands. So it's purely a concept. But as we've talked about before, it is the means through which we get our survival needs. Whereas in the past, our ancestors had an immediate connection to their environment, and so there wasn't any intellectual ideas about it. You either had supplies to keep yourself alive or you didn't. That's it. So that's why FEHU means cow, and that's why cow has to do with money, because money is the way that we get the stuff to survive. But FEHU when we talk about it in terms of wealth, what we're really talking about is we're talking about FEHU as a pure potential. That's why it's in the north. Because it really is, again, that piece of paper does nothing for you. Can't keep you warm, it can't feed you, it can't clothe you, it can't do anything. But because you and I agree that that dollar has a value to it, I can give you $1 and you can give me, a water, which is what I really need. You see what I mean? So we're talking about FEHU in terms of pure potential. That's why it's in the north. And so I want to talk to you about FEHU in terms of, a lot of people when they chant FEHU, they want money. They want wealth. And there's this idea that if you have money, you will be taken care of. You will be safe. You will be provided for if you have money. But again, if there was a nuclear holocaust or an asteroid smashed into the planet, paper money would lose its value instantly. And then we'd be right back to where our ancestors were, which is we need stuff. You have that stuff, I need this stuff. You have dried venison and I have a knife or whatever. So I'll trade you my knife for some venison. And the guy will take the knife and go cut some more venison and then you'll feed yourself. See what I mean? We get back to that. And that is what FEHU is. FEHU is the ability to gain the resources that you need. So if we're only looking at it on the surface level, then that's what we're talking about. And I have had an interesting relationship with money and resources my whole life. And most of my adult life, I have been, not too rich, and sometimes I have been on the verge of homelessness. And it's not that I couldn't do other things. I mean, when I was an actor in Hollywood, you have to have all kinds of jobs and jobs that are flexible, and so sales and phone sales and things like that were, good jobs for that because I had a lot of flexibility. And as much as I hated doing it, I would always end up becoming number 2 salesman. I never became number 1, and I wasn't trying. I wasn't competing. I was just, I've got good communication skills, so I can sell well. And I hated it. Oh my God, I hated it. I hated those jobs. I dreaded it. I would dread going to that, getting up and putting on the tie and going and sitting in my cubicle and oh my God, and looking at the clock and, and I would sometimes make decent money and I would remember driving home and I would drive past the ocean and I'd see people out there surfing and I'd go, those people did something today of value. They connected with that person right there is connecting with the ocean. And even, and I was working to make money so that I could be somebody in society, and of course for survival so I could pay the bills and all that. But, even though I was an artist and an actor, my focus was on being somebody in society. And, I was going to whatever. And I look back on, I wasted so much time. I wasted so much of my time. I've got nothing to show for it now. But the point is that money is not resources. Money doesn't give you anything. It really doesn't. I mean, if you look at FEHU in terms of energetic resources that provide for you and feed you, money is really not it. And again, I'm sure there are plenty of people who have lots of money who are dying of all kinds of horrible diseases. And so on one level, that means that energetically they are not getting fed, because when the body has connection and is connected to life force energy, all of the cells will, the body heals itself if it has access to all of the energy. So what are the things that drive us, or that take that energy away? It's all of our thoughts and our emotions. You know, when we talk about stress can kill you. Well, what they mean by stress isn't stress like good kind of stress, like going to the gym and lifting weights and putting stress on your muscles, or stress where you are learning a new skill. Those are all stressful, but they're good for you. The kind of stress that they're talking about is self-directed negativity, because somebody is doing something that they can't stand, or they're spending a lot of time thinking, you know, I'm not good enough, I don't make enough money, or, you know, they're trying to please other people, like their parents or their wife or their government or their religion, or, you know, their husband, whatever it is. And this self-directed negativity, it basically leaks energy. It saps all of our energy, and we end up leaking energy. And those leaks of energy is what causes physical illness. So you could have millions of dollars and still be not being supported by the universe. So this is why FEHU means support. And I shared about this in the last video I did on YouTube on FEHU, where when it comes to romance, when FEHU comes up, you know, again, perfect example, what does my boyfriend think of me? How does he feel about me? I get this question all the time. And I love these questions. This is why I do this for a living. I enjoy looking at the energetic essence of things and counseling people with that. And so if FEHU comes up, if I don't know the person, I'll ask, is there a financial connection? And sometimes they'll say yes. I've been lending him money, or I support him in whatever way. And then I'll say, well, then he sees you as that. He sees you as somebody who provides financial support. And then I will go on to say that that really is also symbolic to this person of something deeper, which is energetic support, feeling supported for who you are. This is what resources are. Resources are not, you know, just money. Because again, if money was the source of our energetic resources, then all you would need in order to be healthy in life is to have a lot of money. And that's not the case. So what we're really talking about is the energy that supports you in who you are. And so again, you know, I'm talking from a heterosexual male perspective. What all men are looking for in their women is they're looking for that one woman who will give them that energetic support, where they feel that they are supported in being who they are. And when the man has that, he can't live without her. He becomes her Shakti. So, you know, I spent 6.5 years celibate in my 20s. And that was because I had been, two things. One is that I was learning some esoteric spiritual practices, which was all about life force energy, and I was hungry for life force energy, and I wanted it. So the universe became my Shakti, became my feminine energetic support. I learned how to find it in nature and in my practices. But one of the reasons I got into it and was celibate was because I had just come out of a string of horrible relationships where I felt like I was just the energy was just getting sucked out of me, because I felt like I was there for somebody else, you know, and I didn't feel like I was being supported in who I was. Now these are my words now. I couldn't have told you that then. I would have had other things to say, but that was what was going on. So this is what FEHU is, and this is why FEHU comes up when it comes to, in terms of readings for romance, because romance is about that. That's, you know, we're looking for that energetic support. Energetic support, you know, and one of the symptoms that people have nowadays when they don't feel supported is back pain, and this is rampant. It used to be in the 60s, if you remember. The big thing was stomach ulcers, And once society learned that stomach ulcers were caused by stress, once the the collective unconscious of the Western world accepted that as fact, that stomach ulcers were caused by stress, you don't have any more stomach ulcers. And then you have back pain. So back pain, the back is the support. Without your backbone, you wouldn't be able to stand up. You know, you'd fall forward. You'd be a blubbering mass. So lower back pain is about stability and support. And when people have money problems nowadays, they almost always have back pain. And that's, again, because money is symbolic of the universe supporting you. So people who run around and are constantly chasing after money and don't have enough money and have money issues all the time, and they have back pain, it means that they don't feel like the universe supports them in who they are. And we need to feel that. We need to feel that the universe says, I believe in you and I support you. Go be yourself. Go follow your path. Go follow your dharma, your orlog. Go follow that and be that, and we will support you. Now, the truth is that that is how the universe works. So, if you are having money issues, it means that you are in conflict with you following your true path and being your true self. Because the universe only reflects back to you what is going on inside of you. And if you are fighting with yourself about what you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, and if you are not supporting yourself in your highest path, then one of the first things that will happen is that you will be constantly having money problems. And you will constantly be going, what am I doing wrong? Why doesn't the universe take care of me? What do I need to do? All of that. And also at the same time, what I learned over the years, and I learned how to do this. It started, I was an actor. I had a theater company that I had founded. I was running. I was directing plays. I was writing plays. I was teaching classes. I was performing, and I was running around auditioning in Hollywood. And I was a busy guy. But I had almost no money, and I was so, what's the word I want to use? I was so ambitious. And I was really beating myself up. Back then I was in my late 20s. I thought I was an old man. I was in my late 20s, and I hadn't become a big giant movie star. And I was beating myself up for not having become something. You have to prove yourself, become something in society, and all that ego, nonsense. And I was angry and I was furious. I was furious at myself because I wasn't successful, and I was furious at the world because the world wasn't giving me that success that I wanted, or at least in the way that I wanted it. I was actually very successful and well respected. I just didn't, I wasn't a big movie star. That was on my mind, and I was so furious, and I was eating horribly, and I was drinking only coffee and soda. That's all I drank. I didn't drink water. I was either coffee or Hansen's soda. I thought it was healthy because it was Hansen's soda. And I ended up in the hospital with kidney stones. Well, with one big giant kidney stone. It was so giant that they had to climb up my urethra and operate and all that. And it was horrible. It was like being operated on. It was like alien autopsy, kind of felt like. It was horrible. And so after that operation, I almost, it was a life-threatening scenario for me because my kidney wasn't able to excrete. And so after the operation, and I'm lying in bed, and I've got tubes coming out of all kinds of ungodly places, and I'm in all kinds of pain. And I remember thinking to myself, I am never going to worry about money again. Because what I would do before is I would sit and look up at the ceiling in my apartment, when I couldn't sleep, and I would just worry about not having enough money. And so when I was sitting in that hospital room, I said, I'm never going to do that again. As long as I have food and shelter, I'm good for the day. And that's all that matters. And that got me through a lot, even when I had all kinds of credit card debt and all kinds of other stuff and lots of, insecurity in life. Whenever it came down to that and I started to get into that place where I wasn't just being proactive about my finances, but I was just worrying for the sake of worrying, I would stop myself and I would go, do I have food? Yep. Do I have a place to sleep? Yep. That's it. You got everything you need. Are you protected from the elements? Yep. That's it. You're done. Nothing more to think about. And so I was able to get, and I've continued, as things have gone up and down, I've been in places where, I didn't know when my next rent check was going to be, how I was going to get through, the month at all. I mean, and I would just go back to that same place, no matter how weird things looked. I would just go, you know what, I've got everything I need right now, and then I would stop worrying about it. And it served me, and it taught me a lesson that your connection to the universe is all that matters. And the universe is what provides you with your resources. Listen, we are being constantly provided with oxygen. We're being constantly provided with life force energy. Sunlight, there's sunlight pouring in my window right there. I can go outside and get sunlight and have vitamin D released in my skin. I can breathe oxygen. The body and nature is constantly working to provide you with energy. So if you don't have it, it means that you are in conflict. That's what blocks you off from that energetic flow. Conflict about you being yourself. That's what it's all about. So this is why we start with FEHU. Chanting FEHU is not about chanting for money, although you can certainly do that. It's about a meditation on the flow of energy to you, providing you nourishment, providing you sustenance. And the specifics of how that comes out is not important. Listen, you can be dirt poor broke and have all kinds of resources. You can imagine a scenario where somebody has no money and they have a nice place to live and they have food and they have other things. There's all kinds of scenarios where that can happen. So money doesn't provide that. And of course you can imagine somebody with a lot of money who is sick and dying. That's somebody who doesn't have energy and support flowing to them. So the money doesn't do that. The universe is perfectly capable of giving you the resources that you need in whatever form you need them to be in. And it might not be money. So I'm just giving you, again, not only am I giving you a shamanic lesson on how to trust the universe, I'm teaching you how to understand what FEHU means. So, again, FEHU means cow. And in, our ancestors didn't use money. They might have, used some kind of symbology, but originally the form of currency was cattle. Now, it was probably more than cattle. It could have been anything. Could have been goats and pigs and chickens and eggs and, whatever. But again, we're talking about food. The reason why the cow works so well for this is because the cow has everything. Especially for a prehistoric person. The cow has everything you need. It has meat, milk, hide, sinew, horns. If you were a prehistoric hunter-gatherer and you had just taken down a big oryx, you were the richest man in the village. You had everything. And so that's why FEHU means money, because it means wealth. Because whatever it means now. Now today, in order to get the stuff, you have to have money in order to trade. So that's why FEHU means money. That's why we still use the word fee. I need a fee. They charge a fee. Like I charge a fee to talk with somebody on the phone for an hour. That's my FEHU. You're giving me a cow. You're giving me my cow so that I can take care of it. And the great thing about that is that, you give somebody a cow, you don't even have to know what their need is. They'll figure it out. If they need clothing, they'll use the hide. If they need milk, they'll take the milk. If they, whatever it is. They can, with that cow, they can decide what they need. I've always found it funny, the commercials where, they're trying to sell something. And use it on salads. Use it as a hair tonic. Use it as this. It's like, you know what? I know why I need to use it. I don't need you to tell me how I'm supposed to use the product. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, I know what I need. Just give me the thing that I want and I'll figure out how to use it. Well, that's how the cow was. You give somebody a cow, you don't even have to ask what they need. They say, I need a cow. Here, go take the cow. You figure it out, whatever it is that you need. So FEHU is that. FEHU is, when you're tapping into FEHU, you are asking the universe for that resource. And the easiest way is to give people money. And again, since we're on the topic of money, people still contact me. I got another person emailed me just somebody tried to hack into my personal Facebook account and message me and, gave me this long sob story about how I should train them for free. And it's like, without that understanding that energy is a transfer, it's an equal exchange of energy. It's a transfer of energy. And there has never been a time, never, ever, ever has there been a time where shamans did not require some kind of energetic fee for their services. Never. It's a myth. The modern myth that, spirituality should be free, that has no basis in history. And, especially with shamans, the word shaman, people, well, you're a shaman, you should do it for free. And I go, do you know where the word shaman comes from? It comes from Siberia. Go ask a Siberian shaman, if they do things for free. It's like, no, they charge every time. Doesn't matter if you're, Native American, you're giving a guy some tobacco, you have to give that. So again, if you're one of those people where you're like, and there's something that you want from life, whether it's, spiritual teaching or something, and you don't want to give up that money for that thing this is the other thing that I find interesting is people really want their spiritual training. It's the most important thing. They'll say, this is the most important thing to me, as they hold onto their iPhone and they drive their car or whatever but I can't afford it. But I'll trade you this. And it's like, you realize the message you're giving to the universe? You're telling the universe that this thing that you say is the most important to you is so invaluable or has such a lack of value that you're unwilling to part with your paper money for that. So you're giving off this double message if that's the mindset. So the point about this is that your energy that you give, in whatever way that is, deserves an energetic recompense. So this is why martyrs, people who live like martyrs, they give everything to everybody. Those are the first people to get sick and die. And I'll tell you here, since this is shamanism, this is what cancer is all about. The disease of cancer is about people who live like martyrs, who give of themselves and don't get anything back. And they think they're being good people. And this causes all kinds of resentment, and depending on where the cancer is in the body, will tell you, if you know what to look for, it'll tell you what the real issue is. So, and, even though science is every day I'm hearing about this new breakthrough that science is coming to understand what cancer is and how to fix it, and yet then you hear at the same time that the cancer rates have doubled. There's a it's because cancer is not a disease of physical illness. It is a disease of energetic. There's an energy displacement of major proportions that is stuffed underneath into the unconscious. Big smile on their face. I'm this really great, happy, giving person. I give to everybody. Yet you're being consumed from within. So whether it's love, whether it's friendship, whether it's your service that you do, your job, there has to be an equal exchange of energy. The universe will not permit anything less. And so again, we're getting into the Gebo rune now, but this is FEHU. FEHU is you giving. So another thing to think about is, what are you giving in your life? Expect a return from it. Demand a return from it. So when people pay me for my time, they should expect that I give to them. You know? The other thing is that when people, and I, right now, I'm at the place where $100 an hour is what I'm comfortable with. I couldn't go, it's more like I couldn't go less than that. The truth is I don't have the chutzpah to charge more than that per hour, and that's just my issue. As time goes on, I may increase my fee, but for now, that's what I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable charging people $100 an hour for my time. And so when people pay that, they're going to get more out of whatever I give them. Whatever the teaching is, they are going to, because it's now they have paid for it, it has value. And so it's not just about paying for something that you want, it's about investing in what is going to be returned to you. This is why they say you get what you pay for. And it could be the same, it could be the exact same thing. One product costs $10. If it costs $100, you can be sure that somebody's going to maintain that and get the most out of it and enjoy it even more. Same when it comes to teaching. This is something I found as well. I mean, there were people that were asking me to put up my DVDs on the YouTube channel for free, and I did that. And you know what? There's almost no views. And these are things that, I would charge $20 or $30 for to buy the DVD. I put them on. They're still there. There's rune teachings on the ThunderWizard.com YouTube. Hour and a half long teachings. 3 of them. And they have almost no views. But if I were to say I'm going to do that same teaching and say I'm going to give an in-depth master class in rune shamanism, I'm going to charge you $500 to have this video, there's going to be more people that are going to buy it. And they'll get more out of it. So you see what I mean? Support. Energetic support. This is what FEHU is. FEHU is about energetic support. So one of the ways that you can get things coming to you is to give to something. Invest in yourself. Go buy yourself something that you really honestly need and want. If I were to take the camera, you'd see 6 surfboards in here. You see one behind me. I'm obsessed with surfing. And the only reason I don't have more surfboards right now is because I can't fit them in this tiny little place that I live. But I am, one thing I'm not going to do, 53 years old now, and still I've got my health. I've got, who knows how many more years I'm going to be this strong and this physically capable. I'm going to give myself everything I want, because that makes me happy. That allows me to be my best, which means when I'm happy and I'm fulfilled, then I'm 100% here for you, and I can give to you the best of what I have. So, and that again comes back to feeling supported. And when I am in that connection of give and take with the universe, and I give to myself and I sacrifice for myself, I'm happy and I'm fulfilled. I am supported, energetically supported by the universe. And people treat you that way. People will treat you that way. and then you have physical health as well. So you didn't know all of that was FEHU, did you? But that's what FEHU is. So we could probably talk more about it, but yeah, we've bumped into the 1 hour mark. So anyway, so that's that. I think we'll continue to go through the runes, and again, I have no idea what I'm going to say when I just hit, stream on the whatever the program here. And whatever comes out is what's supposed to come out. I'm going to continue to do that with this rune series as we go. So again, I would get the books Rune Shamanism, Rune Divination, and Advanced Rune Shamanism. Here they are. And there are DVDs, and I believe that there are video downloads available. You can just go to Amazon or go to my websites, and click the links, whatever, and get them. And I strongly recommend that you do that, because then you're going to be able to take these and apply it to what's in those basics. You got to have the basics. So that's it for this first class in March. Excuse me. Keep your eyes peeled. Again, get involved in the community link on the Patreon page. And I know it's tough because, I'm not in a place where I can really organize all of that yet. But, trust me, I'm going in that direction. So I need you guys to reach out to each other. And if you have questions, to talk to each other and, keep the community going. Of course, I recommend now, some people are starting to, they come here, and the majority of the people who are beyond the 25, or all the people, are in the 108 per month, which means 1 session per month with me. And some people are realizing that they need more than 1 session. By the way, again, if you're running into resistance, meaning, the month has gone by and you're like, I haven't done anything with that, and I don't know if I should be doing this, then you need to be working with me personally. And that's because one of the, we need to acknowledge the resistance, because resistance means growth, means that you're growing. So it's important that we work. So you can, we've got the 1 hour a week for 108, and then there's the 2 hours per week, which is a new subscription setting. And then there's the 4 hours per week, which is, right now I only have a couple of true apprentices who are working with me 4 hours a month. Did I say a week? 4 hours a month. 4 hours a month, or 2 hours a month, or 1 hour a month. But you're going to, if you're able to work with me, and I'm not doing this because I would much rather have all my time to myself, but, I have a job to do, and I enjoy doing it. So take advantage of that, and it will be worth your while. I can tell you that. Okay, so that's it for now, my friends. Please continue to watch the ThunderWizard.com YouTube channel and subscribe, and be part of that community as well. And if you haven't had a Vedic astrological reading, I strongly recommend it. I can't overemphasize that. In fact, talk to people who've had them. They'll tell you that it makes a huge difference, and it gives me so many more tools to help you really empower yourself. So that's it. Until the next video, if you want, you are encouraged to meditate on these concepts of FEHU, of energetic support, of energetic potential, and chant the rune FEHU. Write it, play with it, meditate on it, let it become part of you, and especially understand that it's about energetically supporting you in whatever way that you need. And by the way, this is just a general, if you want to call it a prayer or an affirmation, it works absolute wonders. You can fill in the blank. Whatever it is you say that you want, you say, give to me blank, in whatever form that is. Actually, give to me my best blank, in whatever form that is. If it's income, then say, give to me my best income in whatever form that is. Meaning you may think you need money, but maybe it's something else. Maybe you need something else to support you. So that's a really good way to deal with FEHU. Chant FEHU with the idea of bring to me my needs in the best way, whatever way that is. And then submit yourself. And then the universe has a blank check to give you exactly what you need instead of you telling it exactly what it is you want. You can now open it up for the universe to provide for you. So meditate on FEHU in this regard. So that's it for now, my friends. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in about a week. All right, take care.